Under the starry night sky, a winged girl named Miyu kneels over Ren, tearfully apologizing for the bloody mess surrounding them. But Ren refuses to blame her. As his blood mixes with her tears, he quietly tells her not to apologize, accepting this grim reality as his deserved punishment and the ultimate price he has to pay. This is Persephonia, a dark tale of monstrous beings that devour human flesh. Sometime later, the city is gripped by fear when a landlord investigates a foul smell in a rundown apartment, only to discover a horribly mutilated, decapitated corpse. It's the 7th gruesome serial murder this month alone. At school, Ren casually scrolls through the horrifying news on his phone, completely unfazed by the rising body count. His classmates nervously chatter about the incident, with one terrified girl pointing out rumors that the killer couldn't possibly be human, given that the victims are literally torn apart and half-eaten. While her friends laugh off the urban legends and naively insist that high schoolers are perfectly safe from such monsters, Ren simply mutters whatever and quietly walks away, leaving their blissful ignorance behind. As Ren is about to leave the classroom, a girl with glasses suddenly stops him, calling out to Azami and inviting him to join the rest of the class for karaoke. The other students are genuinely shocked she would invite the standoffish class representative, and Ren quickly shuts the idea down by politely declining and claiming he already has plans. The moment he steps out into the hall, his classmates immediately start gossiping behind his back, noting his completely unapproachable vibe and how they've never actually seen him hang out with anyone. Down at his shoe locker, his younger sister, Hiyori, suddenly pops up out of nowhere, having eavesdropped on the entire exchange. She playfully teases her older brother about needing to make more friends, but the light-hearted sibling banter quickly fades when Ren solemnly points out what day it is. Hiyori's expression drops as she acknowledges that today is the anniversary of Miyu's death. Clinging anxiously to his sleeve, she begs him not to go out and do anything dangerous, especially with the grisly serial murders happening right in their neighborhood. Ren simply pats her head with a gentle smile, promising to be back soon before heading out, though Hiyori watches him leave with deep concern, her eyes fixated on a severe, lingering injury hidden on his hand. Later, while commuting, Ren scrolls through social media, noting how everyone online is completely obsessed with the recent dismemberments instead of the meteor shower happening tonight. This thought triggers a bittersweet memory of Miyu, his childhood friend who had been bedridden in a hospital for a long time due to a severe illness. Ren used to visit her room every single day, listening to her talk about how she wanted to see a shooting star so she could wish to get better, go to school, and just play outside like a normal kid. Desperate to make her heartfelt wish come true, a younger Ren snuck up to her hospital window one night, waking her up so they could watch the promised meteor shower together. He gently took her hand as they looked up at the night sky, hoping for a miracle, but that beautiful memory abruptly turns into a horrific nightmare when Miyu suddenly begins violently coughing up blood under a flickering streetlight. Despite Ren's panicked cries, she collapses right before his eyes, and the very next morning, he receives the devastating news that she has passed away. Sitting alone on an empty train, consumed by grief and agonizing guilt, Ren realizes that his selfish attempt to grant her wish was the very thing that doomed her. He bitterly admits to himself that he didn't just let her die, he killed her, silently vowing that he would do absolutely anything in the world just to see her one last time. Seeking a shred of closure, Ren travels to an abandoned, ruined building that used to be a secret childhood playground. It was a place Miyu was never healthy enough to visit, but up on its rooftop, the city lights fade away, making it the perfect spot to view the stars. Since no one ever told him where Miyu's grave is, Ren comes to this desolate spot every year to leave flowers in her memory. However, his nostalgic pilgrimage is violently interrupted when he notices something wet on his hand and looks down to find a massive, fresh trail of blood pooling across the floor. Stunned by the sheer volume of the gruesome mess, Ren cautiously follows the crimson trail deeper into the dark, industrial corridors of the ruins. The unmistakable, nauseating metallic stench of blood hits his nose just as he begins to hear the sickening sounds of flesh tearing and wet, squelching slurps echoing from the shadows. Peeking around a concrete pillar, his breath catches in his throat as he spots a mysterious, blood-soaked girl hunched over in the darkness, viciously devouring the dismembered remains of a young man who had desperately and unsuccessfully tried to flee from the monstrous predator just moments before. Utterly horrified and frozen in place, Ren can't believe what he's seeing. A girl is literally eating a corpse. His mind screams at him to run, to get out of there before he's spotted, but it's already too late. He hears the half-eaten victim weakly plead for his life, but the girl just scoffs, surprised he's even still alive, and then promises with a chilling smile that it'll be over quickly. In a blur of motion and a sickening squelch, she finishes the job, casually remarking that she's a kind person who doesn't like to make people suffer pointlessly. Before Ren can process the horror, something rolls to a stop right at his feet. It's the victim's eyeball, forcing Ren to choke back a wave of nausea. Suddenly, the monster is right in his face, a menacing grin on her blood-smeared lips as she declares, "Found you," and playfully asks if it's not rude to peep on a girl like that. Without warning, she delivers a devastating kick that sends him sprawling to the ground, complaining about how much she hates being interrupted during a meal. She lets out a bored yawn, claiming she's already full, but then her entire aura shifts as her body transforms, sprouting demonic horns and star-like markings. With a predatory gaze, she tells Ren that since he saw her true form, she has no choice but to kill him. As she effortlessly lifts him by the throat with just one arm, Ren's mind flashes back to the rumors at school. The culprit isn't even human. As his vision fades, he closes his eyes, completely accepting his fate. After all, what's the point of living when Miyu is already gone? But just as the final blow is about to land, a powerful voice shouts, "No!" causing the demon girl to pause in confusion, wondering who else has just shown up. Before the demon girl can finish him off, a massive, explosive force suddenly shatters the wall beside them, forcing her to drop Ren to the floor. Annoyed by the violent interruption, the demon clicks her tongue, complaining about having to deal with one of her own. As the thick smoke clears, the mysterious savior is revealed to be a striking, angelic figure adorned with bright wings and a glowing halo, radiating star-shaped energy. Without hesitation, the angel unleashes a devastating blast of dark power that blows a massive hole right through the building's concrete. Frustrated, the demon girl demands to know why she is going out of her way to protect a frail human. Realizing the angel is completely unscathed and that a drawn-out battle would only expose their kind to the world, the demon decides it simply isn't worth the hassle. With a cheerful smirk, she leaps out the shattered window, playfully promising to let them off the hook this time before vanishing into the night. Left alone in the ruined structure, the angelic girl turns to Ren with a warm, gentle smile, asking if he's okay. Ren lets out a heavy sigh of relief, agreeing that it was a close call, but his heart suddenly stops the moment he actually looks at his savior. His breath hitches in his throat. He could never, ever mistake that face. Standing right in front of him amidst the rubble, bathed in the soft glow of the starlight, is the impossible. Trembling in sheer disbelief, Ren barely manages to whisper her name, Miyu. Hearing him say it, the angel's eyes widen in shock as she softly calls out to Ren-kun in return. A bittersweet memory immediately echoes in the silence, a moment in the hospital where a blushing, smiling Miyu playfully asked him what he would wish for if he ever saw a shooting star. She used to wonder how he would react to such a question, but for her, the answer was always simple. Ever since the tragic night she passed away, her one and only wish had been to meet him again, and now, sitting together under the starry sky, that wish has miraculously come true. Caught in a momentary daze, her mind flashing back to the suffocating IV tubes of her past, Miyu stares at the boy in front of her, tears welling in her wide eyes as she asks if it's really him and how this is even possible. Overwhelmed by a tidal wave of pure relief, Ren doesn't hesitate. He lunges forward and pulls her into a desperate, tight embrace, his mind repeating a single miraculous thought: Miyu is alive. But this tender, long-awaited reunion shatters in an instant. As Miyu softly asks why he came here, a drop of blood from Ren's injuries suddenly drips onto her face. Her reaction is immediate and violent. With a horrified shriek, she forcefully shoves him away, sending Ren crashing hard against a concrete pillar. He watches in stunned confusion as Miyu drops to her knees, frantically clutching her mouth and gagging as if the scent of his blood is driving her mad. Tears stream down her face as she hysterically screams that she never wanted to see him again, leaving Ren completely heartbroken and bewildered. Before he can even try to calm her down, Miyu turns and flees deeper into the abandoned ruins. Ren immediately chases after her, but by the time he reaches the top floor, Miyu has already stepped out onto the balcony ledge. Staring out into the night, she frantically tells herself that she needs to finish this quickly, preparing to throw herself off the building. Yet even as she stands on the precipice, a darker, mocking voice within her own mind cruelly whispers that she knows she can't actually go through with it. Just as she freezes in agonizing hesitation, a breathless Ren bursts through the doorway behind her, terrified as he begs to know what she is trying to do. Standing on the edge of the balcony with tears streaming down her face, Miyu looks back at Ren and heartbreakingly blames him, crying that if he hadn't shown up, she would have been able to end her life properly. As she desperately begs him to stay away, a bewildered and bleeding Ren demands to know what is going on and what exactly happened to her. Clutching her chest, Miyu drops a horrifying bombshell. She is exactly like the demon girl they just encountered, confessing that she now has to devour human flesh just to survive. As Ren stands there in stunned, uncomprehending silence, Miyu finally reveals the dark truth of what happened after the night of the meteor shower. Back then, as a younger Ren cried helplessly over her failing body, apologizing for causing her collapse, Miyu was rushed to the hospital, ultimately flatlining as she weakly apologized to her mother. With her parents weeping and begging for a miracle, a doctor offered them a sinister lifeline, a highly experimental cure at a secret research facility. As her consciousness faded, Miyu naively wondered if her death would lead her to heaven, where she could eventually reunite with Ren, or if she was destined for hell. The reality turned out to be a nightmare far worse than hell itself. She was transported to a shadowy lab, strapped down to a cold operating table, and subjected to endless agonizing surgeries and gruesome bodily experiments. Wires, surgical tools, and tubes were forced into her violently open chest as she was mercilessly rebuilt from the inside out. By the time the nightmarish torture was over, Miyu realized the horrific truth of her existence. Staring at Ren through tear-filled eyes, she confesses that she is no longer human, revealing that the scientists at the facility had turned her into a monster, dubbing beings like her Persephonias. Continuing her tragic confession, Miyu reveals that just a week ago, a chaotic accident at the research facility allowed all the Persephonias to escape into the city. It was only out in the real world that they discovered their horrific nature. They crave human flesh. And to Miyu's absolute horror, every single person she looks at seems deliciously appetizing. Trembling and fighting back her drool, she admits to Ren that the metallic scent of his bleeding wounds earlier nearly drove her feral. She has spent days desperately suppressing her monstrous instincts, but she has finally reached her breaking point. Resolving that she would much rather die than become a murderer, Miyu stands on the very edge of the balcony, screaming at Ren to stay away, because if he takes even one more step, her ravenous hunger will completely take over and she will devour him. Sobbing uncontrollably, she cries out to the empty night sky that she truly doesn't want to hurt anyone. But before she can throw herself into the abyss, Ren lunges forward, desperately tackling her away from the terrifying drop and pinning her safely behind the steel railing. As they sit entangled on the cold floor, panting heavily, the intoxicating scent of his blood hits Miyu's nose once again. But instead of pushing her away in fear, Ren gently cradles her face. Staring deeply into her wide, tear-filled eyes, he calmly asks her exactly how much of him she needs to eat in order to survive, softly assuring her that it is completely fine if she feeds on him. Stunned by his terrifying offer, Miyu assumes he must be playing some kind of cruel joke. In response, Ren firmly states that he is dead serious, slowly unbuttoning his collar to expose his bare neck and chest to her predatory gaze. In his heart, Ren realizes the heavy truth. For years he carried the agonizing guilt of thinking his selfish wish had killed her. But now that she is miraculously alive yet suffering so deeply that she wishes for death, he feels a profound responsibility to save her no matter the cost. Driven by an unwavering, desperate devotion, he softly promises to give her absolutely everything, his blood, his body, his very life, gently holding her cheek as he declares that he refuses to ever lose her again. Still trembling with hesitation, Miyu timidly asks if he's truly okay with this, warning him that it's going to hurt a lot, but Ren simply tells her that he doesn't mind. He gently instructs her to aim a bit lower on his chest so people won't easily see the bite marks. With tears still welling in her eyes, Miyu leans in, opens her mouth wide, and violently sinks her fangs into his flesh. Ren unleashes an agonizing scream as blood splatters across the floor. Realizing she might be hurting him too much, Miyu momentarily panics and pulls back to lick the gruesome wound, but the predatory instinct is simply too overwhelming. As she continues to feed, Ren's inner thoughts reveal his sheer torment. Every time she bites down, he feels himself slipping out of consciousness, only for the searing pain to violently jolt him awake again. With her mouth smeared in crimson, Miyu cries as she guiltily admits that his blood tastes awfully delicious, apologizing profusely for putting him through such unimaginable pain before diving back in to bite a little deeper. As their tearful apologies overlap, Ren finally accepts the dark reality. She truly isn't human anymore. But to him, it simply doesn't matter. Believing this horrific tragedy is ultimately his fault, he pulls her close, deciding that having Miyu alive is more than enough for him. Overwhelmed by blood loss and pain, he finally passes out in her arms. Sometime later, Ren groggily opens his eyes to find Miyu gently looking down at him, playfully apologizing for pushing him too hard. Though still dizzy, Ren assures her he's fine. Suddenly, a bright streak flashes across the night sky. Miyu's face lights up with sheer joy as she points out a shooting star. Smiling softly at her, Ren admits that the whole reason he came to this rooftop tonight was to see the meteor shower he missed all those years ago, and more importantly, to see her again. Looking deeply into her eyes, he whispers that it seems his deepest wish finally came true. Meanwhile, far from this tender reunion, the ruthless demon girl from earlier sits alone in a blood-soaked room, casually gnawing on a severed human arm. She clicks her tongue in annoyance, noting that Miyu and Ren managed to escape at the last second, though she arrogantly claims she could have easily killed them both if she was actually hungry. Carrying her gruesome leftovers, she kicks open a door to apologize to a fellow Persephonia named Chisato, only to find the girl mercilessly slaughtered on the floor. Disgusted by the mess rather than the death of her comrade, she drops the arm and complains about the blood dirtying her feet, deciding right then and there that it's time to find a new place to live. Rummaging through a closet, she plans to take over a young human girl's house so she can steal some cute clothes, all while mocking Miyu's naive, stupid dream of actually trying to coexist with humans. Lazing back on a bed as her stomach growls loudly, the demon girl smirks. No matter how much flesh she consumes, the hunger is absolutely insatiable, and with a wicked, predatory grin, she vows to feast on a whole lot more people tomorrow. Ren finally brings Miyu back to his apartment, completely flabbergasting his little sister Hiyori, who can hardly believe her eyes when she sees the girl she thought had died years ago standing right in their entryway. Without giving his sister any time to process the sheer shock, Ren casually instructs Miyu to take a warm bath and borrow some of Hiyori's clothes, letting out an exhausted sigh as he prepares to feed his sister a completely fabricated excuse. Meanwhile, Miyu sinks into the steaming tub, overwhelmed by a simple warmth she hasn't felt in years. Whatever random lie Ren ends up spinning works perfectly, because Hiyori soon bursts in with tears in her eyes, pulling Miyu into a massive hug and insisting she can stay with them for as long as she wants. Later, Miyu steps out wearing Hiyori's clothes, which hang rather loosely on her frame, a cute sight that Ren tries his best not to stare at. When it's time for bed, Miyu cheerfully offers to sleep on the cold floor since she's been sleeping on the streets anyway, but Ren immediately shoots the idea down. He decides to take the living room sofa so Miyu can have a proper bed, though sleep is the last thing on his mind. Sitting alone in the dark, Ren scrolls through his phone and uncovers a buried news report about a massive explosion at the Advanced Life Sciences Research Center. He is absolutely sickened to realize that the government had been experimenting on innocent children and hiding the fallout behind the recent string of serial murders. His grim research is interrupted when Miyu quietly creeps into the living room, admitting she can't sleep. Ren shows her an article about a slaughtered family, and Miyu guiltily confirms that her kind is responsible, though Ren firmly reminds her that she isn't a monster like them. When he asks if a Persephonia caused the lab explosion, Miyu explains that they were heavily sedated that night. She recounts the terrifying chaos of the breakout, remembering how she was trapped inside her locked cell while the others fled. One of the older girls even flashed a cruel smile and left her behind to die, forcing a desperate Miyu to smash through the reinforced glass with a fire extinguisher, Though she managed to break out and was briefly helped by a friendly girl named Hasumi, they eventually lost each other in the dark city. Listening to her harrowing survival story, Ren realizes just how many tragic, scared kids are actually out there. Trembling with vulnerability, Miyu admits that this warm, safe environment feels like a fragile dream that might shatter at any second, shyly asking if she can just sleep beside him for the night. Softening his gaze, Ren agrees to let her stay close just for today. As she rests her head on his shoulder and peacefully drifts off to sleep, holding his hand, Ren silently vows to protect her from the nightmares of her past, completely unaware of the horrors still lurking in the city. As the morning sun rises to cast a bright, hopeful glow over the town, that peaceful illusion is violently shattered elsewhere. In a horribly blood-soaked living room, the exact same smiling Persephonia, who had happily abandoned Miyu in the lab, throws open the curtains to greet the beautiful dawn. Turning her gaze back to a terrified, weeping mother, desperately shielding her two young children from the surrounding gore, the monster flashes a sickeningly sweet smile and cheerfully asks which of the kids they should have for breakfast. The next morning begins with a piercing shriek from Hiyori, who throws open her brother's bedroom door only to find him and Miyu tangled up together in a highly compromising position. She freaks out, screaming about how it's not okay for them to sleep together and demanding they get textbooks. She sets out to study, something she always wanted to do but was never healthy enough for. Her excitement, however, is up for school, but Ren, dazed and groggy, realizes it would be way too hard to wake the peacefully sleeping Miyu. Sometime later, Miyu groggily opens her eyes, at first believing the entire reunion with Ren was just a beautiful dream. But the sight of a normal clock and the quiet comfort of the living room confirms it was all real. She quickly crushed when she realizes she can't understand a single word. Meanwhile, at school, the previous night finds a note from Ren explaining he's gone to school, and with a surge of excitement, she decides to finally do something she's always wanted: study. She eagerly pulls a textbook off the shelf, but her smile quickly fades as she stares. Events have clearly taken their toll on Ren, who can barely keep his eyes open in class. He blames his exhaustion on anemia at the complex equations and kanji, understanding absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, at school, Ren is completely drained from the blood loss while secretly worrying about leaving Miyu all by herself. Back at the apartment, Miyu is hit by intense hunger pangs. So much so that he dozes off in class, much to his classmates' surprise. He apologizes, blaming it on anemia, but his mind is consumed with worry for Miyu, left all alone. That worry is well-founded, Parrot to find a way to eat normal food so she won't have to hurt Ren ever again. She opens the fridge and finds, as Miyu is suddenly hit by a powerful wave of hunger. She desperately hopes that eating normal food might satisfy her craving a surprise gift from Hiyori, a bag of cookies she had craved for years in the hospital, for a fleeting and spare Ren from any more pain. She discovers a bag of cookies left for her by Hiyori, a simple treat she craved throughout her entire hospitalization. Overjoyed, she thanks Hiyori in spirit and happily takes a bite, savoring the delicious taste. But her moment of bliss is brutally cut short. Her modified body violently rejects the normal food moment. She experiences pure happiness, joyfully munching on the delicious treats. But her hope is viciously crushed when her body violently, and she ends up hunched over the toilet, throwing everything up. The hunger returns with a vengeance, confirming her worst fears. Rejects the food, forcing her to throw everything up. Still starving, she gazes out the window when a captivating, delicious aroma suddenly, just as despair begins to set in, a new, overwhelmingly delicious scent wafts in through the open window. Believing it hits her nose. Instantly realizing another Persephonia is hunting nearby, she rushes out, determined to stop the senseless killing. But another Persephonia on the hunt, Miyu's protective instincts kick in, and she rushes out to stop them. What she finds is a scene straight out of a nightmare. The psychotic girl from the lab, Hasumi, stands over, but the smell leads her to a horrifying scene next door. Peeking through a doorway, she sees the same sadistic, smiling Persephonia from the night before, standing over a freshly slaughtered mother and her two terrified, crying children. The monster giggles, mockingly praising the mother's selfless last words before admitting she feels jealous, as she can't even remember her own mother. With a blood-smeared, sickeningly sweet smile, she turns to the horrified children, telling them not to be scared as she's going to take them to their mother right away, all while a traumatized Miyu watches from the shadows, completely powerless. Driven by the overwhelmingly delicious scent, Miyu finds herself standing in front of the neighboring house. Using her enhanced strength, she effortlessly shatters the doorknob and steps inside, only to be hit by the gut-wrenching stench of death. The pristine suburban home has been turned into a grisly slaughterhouse, the walls and floor painted with blood. Stifling a wave of nausea, she pushes forward and finds a young boy, horribly maimed but still clinging to life. As she rushes to his side, he weakly recognizes her, but before she can offer any comfort, her own monstrous hunger begins to take over, her mouth watering at the sight of his wounds. Just then, a cheerful voice calls out her name. Stepping out from a back room wrapped in nothing but a towel is Hasumi, the very same girl who helped Miyu escape the lab. Overjoyed to see her friend again, Hasumi brightly confirms that she's responsible for the massacre, casually patting her full stomach and admitting with an embarrassed giggle that she might have eaten a little too much. When a horrified Miyu asks why she would do something so monstrous, Hasumi simply cocks her head in confusion, explaining that this is simply their nature. They are predators who need to eat people to survive. Miyu screams that she's wrong, that killing is a terrible, evil thing, but Hasumi only smiles with a hint of pity. She calls Miyu kind but hopelessly naive, and in a moment of twisted, perverse kindness, she offers her the leftovers, the terrified, crying children, since she knows Miyu must be starving. With a breezy farewell and a promise to meet again, Hasumi gets dressed and leaves Miyu alone in the House of Horrors. Left amidst the carnage, Miyu hears the dying boy whisper, asking if his little brother is safe. Her eyes drift over to the boy's mutilated corpse lying just a few feet away. In a moment of heartbreaking mercy, Miyu lies, assuring him that his brother is fine and that a doctor is on the way, allowing the boy to pass away with a peaceful smile. This final act of humanity shatters her, and she collapses to the floor, weeping in absolute despair over the cursed existence she's been forced into. Just then, a frantic Ren bursts through the door, yelling her name, furious that she left the apartment despite his note telling her to stay inside. Through her tears, Miyu quietly admits that she couldn't read the complex kanji in his message. Ren's anger immediately melts away into concern as he apologizes for yelling. Broken and ashamed, Miyu confesses that the hunger became too much to bear. Looking up at him with eyes full of self-loathing and despair, she asks the one question that has been tormenting her soul. Is it really okay for someone like me to be alive? Without a word, Ren pulls her into a tight, protective embrace, silently giving her the answer she so desperately needed. Their new life together falls into a fragile, deceptive routine. Hiyori cheerfully asks Miyu what she wants for dinner, but Miyu can only politely decline, using the fabricated excuse Ren gave his sister, that her illness puts severe limits on what she can eat, forcing her to have special meals outside. While Hiyori innocently wonders about Miyu's diet, Ren knows the grim truth, realizing the only reason he's eating so much lately is to replenish the blood he's constantly losing to sustain her. In the quiet moments between these tense charades, he tutors Miyu, amazed at how quickly she masters years of schoolwork she missed. But this peaceful domesticity is built on a dark, painful secret. When Miyu's hunger becomes unbearable, she looks at him with pleading, desperate eyes, asking if it's okay. The ritual begins with a hesitant lick, but quickly devolves into a ravenous frenzy as she latches onto him, the need for blood completely overwhelming her. Ren tries to warn her that licking the wound too much will mix his blood with sweat, but she's far beyond reason, her pleas turning into desperate, breathless demands for more. Lost in her insatiable craving, she sinks her teeth deep into his shoulder, and he screams in agony. As he bites down on his hand to stifle the noise so Hiyori won't hear, Miyu gently tells him not to suppress his voice, promising to be quick. But the feeding becomes more intense each day, her hunger growing more demanding, and Ren can feel himself nearing his limit, on the verge of losing consciousness from the blood loss. In a moment of clarity, he stops her from biting a visible spot on his back, and she instantly pulls away, sobbing and apologizing profusely for getting carried away. The next day at school, The toll is obvious. A large bandage on his neck draws the attention of his classmates, and the concerned class representative notes that he's been spacing out and looks anemic, but Ren brushes her off. He can only think about how Miyu has survived for a whole week on his blood alone, wondering how many people the other, more monstrous Persephonias have devoured in that time. His worst fears are realized when he returns home to find Miyu in the throes of a painful withdrawal, desperately sucking on her own wrist. The situation takes a horrifying turn when Hiyori comes home unexpectedly early from school with a scraped knee from PE. The sweet metallic scent of fresh blood instantly floods Miyu's senses, her predatory instincts roaring to life. As Hiyori innocently wonders why Miyu is staring at her so intensely, a soul-crushing truth dawns on Miyu with agonizing clarity. Ren's body alone will never be enough to satisfy her monstrous hunger.